Hello everyone, welcome back to my coverage of The Last of Us Season 2. This was another great episode overall. I will say though, that I think this season is too short in general. I still love the show though. The writing, the directing, the acting are all fantastic, and this episode was super tense, especially the second half. But part of me feels like this story is going a little too fast. Before I continue on, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button, it's a great help. And also feel free to check out my letterbox where I am very active. I want to address a bit of the discourse surrounding last week's episode. Some of the takes I've heard on it genuinely make my brain hurt from the amount of mental gymnastics that it would require to reach the conclusions I've seen people make. If you didn't like the episode, that's fine. I don't agree, but that's something I can brush off. But people review bombing because Ellie and Dina, or whining at Ellie's "I'm going to be a dad" line, makes my brain hurt, which makes my faith in humanity decline even further, especially the joke part. People are taking Ellie's dad joke way too seriously. It's not meant to be taken literally. It's so in your face obvious, and I don't understand how people are misinterpreting it. If you think it's a bit cringe, that's fair. Any other take on that, I don't understand. And review bombing because of any element where people who aren't straight, it's not surprising, I called it in my last video, but it's stupid. If you're still doing that, why are you on the internet? I don't get what's people's issue with these things. Just be normal. Gay people exist. Get over it. Ellie was gay in the game. People still whined about it then, back in 2020 when the game came out. I don't understand why those same people who were whining about the game are sticking around for the show when they know that this stuff will happen. Anyway, to change up my format a bit, I want to start with some of my criticisms of this episode. Most of my criticism surrounding this episode could also be applied to the season as a whole, but I think a lot of the story is being condensed to a bit of a detriment. Seattle Day 2 is a very long act in The Last of Us Part 2, even without the flashbacks. It's always been my favorite chunk of the game because of the elements of gameplay, exploration, and story that is all happening at the same time in Day 2. Day 2 is Ellie being on her own for a significant amount of time and letting that pent-up rage and despair build up until she reaches Nora. It is a dark descent through her own psyche while also being a literal descent into the horrors of Seattle until the basement of the hospital. To be fair, in reality, most of the second day in Seattle is gameplay. The Hillcrest chapter, while being one of the best gameplay and exploration-wise and is a personal favorite of mine, is fairly thin on story. It's basically just Ellie looking for Tommy and then running into Jesse. So, while it would have been awesome to see Ellie and Jesse escape the infected and WLF in the truck like in the game, it makes sense why this would be cut from the show, and I'm perfectly fine with it. That chapter is still in the game, it's not going anywhere. I just wish that this episode was longer than 45 minutes. And like I stated at the start of the video, don't mistake my wish for this story to be longer with me somehow not enjoying the show. I love this episode. I think it's the second best of the season, easily. I just wish that stuff like Ellie's journey to the hospital on her own was a bit longer, or that there was more time to breathe within the moment-to-moment action that happens within the episode. Part of what makes the game's version of this story so effective is how agonizing it is for the characters to get from one place to another within Seattle, which is something I would have liked to see a bit more of. And for the last thing I will say about criticism of the show is that I think, especially in the first half of this episode, I think they're painting Ellie in a way that makes her look dumber than she actually is. She's clearly not a dumb person, but I wish that they didn't play this aspect up a bit. But with that said, everything else about the episode I thought worked very well. This is when Ellie finally lets loose that darkness that has been pent up within her. She's been putting on a mask, pretending like everything is fine, but when she's left on her own with her own thoughts and her last memories of Joel, it eats her inside. This is done in the haunting scene where Ellie reaches Nora in the hospital basement. An incredible moment in the show, an incredible moment in the game, but I'll get back to that moment a bit later because it happens at the end and a lot more happens earlier. A moment that I have been waiting for eagerly and hoping every episode we get is a hint at future days, and we finally get that moment. And the moment in this episode sent chills down my spine when Ellie picks up the guitar in the theater and plays the first few notes of Future Days. She plays the very first part of it and can't continue. It just hurts too much. As sad as this is, It also makes me so happy. I'm so happy that Neil and Craig don't care that this song technically didn't exist until well after the show's version of The Outbreak. It's just too important and too connected to the story and too connected to Joel and Ellie for it to not be implemented. I really liked the depth that was added to Dina, where she talks about the memory she has of her family. It's quite different from what I remember her talking about in the game about her family, but I think it works very well for her character here and adds quite a bit of motivation to why she's helping Ellie. Once the duo reaches the empty building with the stalkers, the episode basically becomes relentless. Jesse finally arriving and helping out is a great moment that accentuates just how out of their depth Ellie and Dina are, even with Dina being the prepared one. And now the people who have been complaining and whining that they think Tommy won't end up going to Seattle can now shut up because it is confirmed that Tommy is in Seattle. I do agree that I think Tommy should have gone before Ellie and Dina, but he is at least there in Seattle now. And then, to me, a more important and notable moment is the first encounter with the Seraphites in the park. In the game, this is the first encounter that Ellie has with the Seraphites, and technically that's also true in the show, but for the show viewers, we have obviously already met the Seraphites just from different perspectives. We've seen the man with his daughter in the forest, and them acting like human beings, and them treated from a more humanistic perspective. We've seen the captured Scar, who was being tortured. We've seen the aftermath of the violence they are capable of, and now we are seeing the actual ritual violence they commit against others. This is when Ellie, Dina, and Jesse are also separated with an arrow to Dina's leg. I like how the first instance of the Seraphites retaliating against our protagonists is still captured with an arrow, but instead of Ellie being hit with it, to introduce a new gameplay mechanic with being able to pull arrows out, this is used to separate the characters. And then Ellie sees the hospital despite definitely being able to backtrack and go help Jesse and Dina. And this is when the episode really steps up and brings out a true visceral intensity that I was waiting for. Ellie left on her own in Seattle can become a very scary person to people who are in her way, and I think this scene establishes that very well. The great cold open establishing the hospital having blocked off basement levels with spores is a haunting moment that also contrasts a kind of throwaway character who leaves her son behind with Joel's decision to do the opposite of that. And we finally get spores, and the implementation here works very well for the show. And it's also kind of important for this aspect of Nora's death. It would be kind of lame if Nora got bit and then Ellie got bit again to showcase that Ellie was immune. I think Ellie being bit constantly is getting a little tiring to reveal that to characters, so I'm glad they went with the spores route here. The initial confrontation when Ellie first meets Nora, again, is done very well and tense. Ellie kind of has turned off any sense of joy or masks that she has built here and just becomes an empty vessel. Of course, Nora basically repeats verbatim what she said in the game about Joel deserving what he got and then enraging Ellie and then getting that chase. And while this chase is short, it adds to that rage buildup that Ellie has. And once again, I have to compliment the incredible set design of this hospital basement. The cordyceps built up over the years is so intricately detailed and realistic looking, and it creates a true nightmare fuel scenario for anyone who isn't Ellie that goes down there. And we also get some hints for something else that is down in that basement, with some subtle sound design in the background. I think, at least. I, for one, am insanely excited for that, which will more likely happen away into Season 3, so we'll have to wait a while for that. I also love how the deep red lighting is recaptured in the show. That is basically the same as the game. I'm also just a sucker for any scene has a deep crimson lighting like this. I don't know why, but it always looks good to me. This dark moment that has been built up for quite a while would not work if the performances did not land, and Bella Ramsey absolutely crushes this scene. It's a different kind of intensity that the game has, while also keeping the essence of the moment similar, where Ellie finally unleashes this pent-up rage, despair, and emptiness on one of the people that was there when Joel was murdered. People have been complaining, undeservedly I might add, about Bella Ramsey's version of Ellie seeming to be happy or peppy despite being on this revenge quest. Well, this episode, and specifically this scene, is exactly why they made it seem that way up until now. That false mask of normalcy is completely dropped here. Ellie becomes an empty shell of a human being. She is going to make the last few moments of Nora's life a waking nightmare until she gets what she wants. And despite the show cutting elements and making everything faster than what I feel like they should be, this moment was done to near perfection in my eyes. And I swear the more I hear about people hating on Bella Ramsey's performance, the more frustrated I get with it. How do you look at something like this and think anything other than this being an excellent performance? It's different from Game Ellie, sure, but it's top-notch acting all around. And the final stinger being a tease at the flashbacks we'll be getting next week made my heart swell. Joel's death is, to me, the most impactful and devastating death I've ever experienced with a piece of fiction, and it's needed for the story, but I love seeing him regardless. He's among my favorite characters of all time. Pedro kills it in the role, and I think the juxtaposition of being without Joel for so long is going to make this next episode very special. I've heard many excellent things about episode 6, which is directed by Neil Druckmann himself, and written by him alongside Hallie Gross, who co-wrote the game. And I am so, in a strange way, excited to see how Joel and Ellie's relationship broke apart. Thanks for watching, everyone. Remember to subscribe to the channel and give the video a thumbs up. It's a great help. Be sure to check out my Letterboxd, follow me there. Stay tuned for when I talk about next week's episode of The Last of Us Season 2. I'm very excited. Endure and survive.
If it is to be said, so it is.